Adventures on the Mississippi Steamboat, all aboard the Spirit of the Delta. The air in New Orleans hung heavy with humidity and the sweet, intoxicating scent of beignet. The Miller family stood on the bustling wharf, gazing up at the magnificent paddle wheeler, the Spirit of the Delta. Her ornate white railings, gleaming brass, and towering. She implied a rival collector might have orchestrated it, throwing suspicion back. As she spoke, Chloe saw Julian Blackwood signal subtly to Silas Vance, who was sitting near the back. Vance then accidentally knocked over a tray of drinks, creating a loud diversion that ended the conversation. Later that night, Leo, unable to sleep, decided to do some solo investigating. He used his phone's flashlight to search the Grand Salon. Near the empty pedestal, hidden under a velvet curtain, he found a tiny, almost invisible piece of evidence, a single, discarded matchstick with a faint scent of a unique, expensive pipe tobacco. He remembered Mr. Vance had been smoking a pipe on deck earlier. Meanwhile, Chloe had a breakthrough. She remembered seeing Captain Beauregard's old family photos displayed in a glass case near the ship's bridge. In one, a much younger Captain Beauregard stood proudly next to an older man, both holding what looked exactly like the Cipher Wheel. The photo was captioned, "Grandfather's Gift." The Cipher Wheel had a deeper, more personal connection to the captain than just a new acquisition. It was a family heirloom. The Millers now had multiple threads: Evelyn Blackwood's motive, Julian's suspicious behavior, Vance's diversion tactics and the pipe tobacco, and the Cipher Wheel's unexpected link to the captain's family. The ship was approaching a less populated stretch of the river, and the feeling of urgency grew. They knew they had to act fast before the thief made their move. The game was afoot, and the Spirit of the Delta was holding its breath. The Cipher's code and a midnight maneuver. The revelations about Captain Beauregard's familial connection to the Cipher will galvanize the Millers. This wasn't just about a stolen artifact, it was about a family legacy. They knew they needed to approach the captain, but they needed solid proof. Leo, with his keen eye for tech, realized something crucial about the security footage glitch. It wasn't a simple static. It was a loop. Someone had cleverly recorded a few minutes of empty Grand Salon footage and played it back, creating the illusion of a continuous feed. This required precise timing and access to the ship's security system. And Leo suspected Julian Blackwood. Given his tech background, he'd overheard Julian talking about network architecture once was capable. Armed with Leo's observation about the footage and Chloe's discovery of Captain Beauregard's family photo, Tom and Sarah decided it was time to confront the captain. They found him in his private study, a somber room filled with nautical charts and historical books. "Captain," Tom began, "we believe we've found something important regarding the Cipher Wheel." Sarah carefully laid out the evidence: Leo's analysis of the security footage, the unique matchstick found by Leo, and Chloe's photo of his grandfather. Captain Beauregard, initially skeptical, listened intently. When he saw the photograph of his grandfather with the Cipher Wheel, a profound sadness crossed his face. "This wheel, it was my grandfather's, yes," he confirmed quietly. "He inherited it from his own father, a Confederate general. He eventually loaned it to a museum. When it came up for auction recently, I acquired it to bring it home, where it belongs, on this very ship." He slammed his fist on the table. "Blackwood, I knew she was circling like a vulture at the auction. But I had no proof she would resort to this." "We believe Julian and Silas Vance are working together," Sarah stated. Vance's unique pipe tobacco smell, Julian's tech skills for the loop. Captain Beauregard's jaw tightened. "There's an old, seldom-used cargo hold below deck. It's only accessible from a discreet staircase near the crew quarters, or from the outer deck via a hidden hatch near the stern. If they intend to smuggle it off, It'll likely be done there, especially at our next secluded stop, a private estate upriver, where security will be minimal. The next scheduled stop was in less than 5 hours. The family and the captain devised a plan. They'd need to catch Blackwood and Vance red-handed. As dusk settled, casting long shadows across the river, the tension on the spirit of the Delta became unbearable. Leo, using a makeshift motion sensor app on his phone, set up a silent alarm near the cargo hold's hidden deck hatch. Chloe, with her keen hearing, listened for the telltale squeak of the seldom-used staircase. Around midnight, just as the boat was approaching the isolated private estate, Leo's phone vibrated silently. Motion detected at the stern hatch. He whispered to his family, who were hidden in the shadows of the lower deck. They crept towards the cargo hold. A faint sliver of light escaped from under the hatch. Peeking through a crack, they saw Julian Blackwood and Silas Vance. Julian was meticulously wrapping the Cipher Wheel in thick canvas, while Vance, puffing on his distinctive pipe, looked at a complex diagram. It wasn't a treasure map. It was a blueprint of the ship's mooring system at the estate, showing how a small private boat could approach unseen. Just a few more minutes, Julian, Vance mumbled, and our precious antiquity will be off this floating museum and into a private collection, where it belongs. Aunt Evelyn will be pleased, Julian sneered, tightening the last strap on the canvas. As they moved to open the hatch, Captain Beauregard, along with Tom and Sarah, burst in. "Hold it right there," the captain roared, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a steely resolve. Julian and Vance froze. Julian, in a desperate move, lunged for the Cipher Wheel, intending to throw it overboard into the dark river. But Leo, anticipating his move, tackled him from the side, sending them both sprawling. The wrapped Cipher Wheel slid precariously towards the open hatch. Chloe, reacting instantly, dove, catching the heavy package just as it was about to tumble into the churning Mississippi. She held it tight, her face grim. Vance, seeing their plan unravel, tried to bolt, but Tom, years of chasing after rambunctious students coming in handy, sidestepped and tripped him. Vance tumbled, his pipe clattering against the deck. The small cargo hold was a scene of controlled chaos, illuminated by the bobbing lanterns and the flashlights from the millers. The Cipher Wheel was safe. The culprits were caught. Resolution and a river's tale. The arrest of Julian Blackwood and Silas Vance was discreet yet effective. Captain Beauregard, with the assistance of the ship's security, confined them to their cabins until they could be handed over to port authorities at the next major stop. Evelyn Blackwood, feigning shock and outrage, vehemently denied any involvement, but the captain informed her that a full investigation would likely expose her complicity. Her ambition had finally caught up with her. The Cipher Wheel, now safely back in Captain Beauregard's possession, was carefully examined. Tom confirmed its authenticity and, with the captain's permission, even managed to decipher a small section of a coded message hidden within its mechanism. It wasn't a treasure map, but a series of supply routes and troop movements, a valuable historical document confirming long-held theories about Confederate logistics. The next morning, Captain Beauregard held a private ceremony in the Grand Salon. He publicly thanked the Miller family, particularly Leo and Chloe, for their quick thinking and sharp observations. He explained the personal significance of the Cipher Wheel. Twin smokestacks seemed to ripple with the ghosts of a bygone era. "No Wi-Fi for a week, Leo," 14-year-old Chloe announced, a mischievous glint in her eyes, turning to her older brother, 17-year-old Leo, whose face was already pale at the thought. Leo, permanently attached to his noise-canceling headphones, grumbled, "This is going to be torture. Absolute torture." Their parents, Sarah, a vibrant architect, and Tom, a history professor specializing in the American South, exchanged a knowing smile. This cruise was Tom's idea, a digital detox masquerading as a cultural immersion. Think of it as stepping back in time, kids. Tom beamed, already feeling the river's pull. Imagine the stories these waters could tell. As they crossed the gangplank, the interior of the spirit of the Delta enveloped them in plush velvet, polished mahogany, and the soft murmur of genteel conversation. It felt like walking onto a movie set. Their cabin, though cozy, was a comfortable retreat, adorned with antique-style furnishings. The initial hours were a blur of exploration. Chloe, armed with a sketch pad, was captivated by the intricate details of the boat. Leo, after several futile attempts to find a signal, begrudgingly started exploring the deck, occasionally snapping a photo with his phone, which, mercifully, wasn't yet dead. Sarah admired the architecture, while Tom was in his element, regaling anyone who would listen with facts about Steamboat history. During dinner in the grand dining hall, a lavish affair of Southern cuisine, Tom pointed out some of their fellow passengers. "Look, kids, over there," he whispered, gesturing to a table across the room. "That's Evelyn Blackwood, the renowned historical artifact collector. And her nephew, Julian, I believe." Evelyn Blackwood was a woman who exuded an air of stern elegance, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Julian, her nephew, was sharply dressed, with an unsettlingly intense gaze that seemed to miss nothing. Tom explained that Blackwood was famous, or infamous, for acquiring rare pieces, sometimes with methods that skirted ethical lines. He'd once almost outbid Tom for a rare Civil War map. And Tom continued, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "I heard a rumor that the Spirit of the Delta has a new acquisition for its onboard museum, a legendary piece of history." The next morning, the ship's captain, a jovial man with a booming laugh named Captain Beauregard, announced the new exhibit with great fanfare. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed over the intercom, "we're honored to present a priceless relic of the Civil War era, General Beauregard's Cipher Wheel. This ingenious device, used by the general himself, is said to contain the key to a lost Confederate treasure or a secret wartime message. It has just been acquired and will be on display in the Grand Salon tonight." As the cruise continued upriver, the spirit of the Delta cut a stately path through the murky green waters. The initial excitement was palpable, but a subtle undercurrent of tension began to emerge. Chloe, while sketching near the salon, overheard a hushed conversation between Julian Blackwood and a shifty-looking man with a neatly trimmed beard. Words like opportunity and timing floated on the breeze. Leo, scrolling through old news articles on his cached phone data, stumbled upon a piece about Evelyn Blackwood's controversial acquisition history, including a past incident involving a disputed ownership of a rare coin. That afternoon, as the ship docked briefly for a shore excursion at a picturesque plantation, Chloe noticed something odd. As they disembarked, she saw Julian Blackwood linger on the gangplank, glancing back at the Grand Salon. He wasn't looking at the exhibit poster. He was looking at the back entrance, obscured by a potted palm. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, the excitement for the Cipher Wheel's unveiling grew. The Grand Salon buzzed with anticipation. Tom was practically vibrating with enthusiasm. But just as Captain Beauregard approached the velvet-draped pedestal where the Cipher Wheel was meant to be revealed, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The velvet was pulled back. The pedestal was empty. Panic rippled through the elegant room. It's gone," a crew member stammered. Captain Beauregard's face went from jovial to ashen. The General Beauregard Cipher Wheel, the priceless relic, had vanished. Leo, who had grudgingly left his headphones in their cabin for the unveiling, suddenly felt a jolt. This was no longer just a boring cruise. This was an honest-to-goodness mystery. And he had a feeling the Miller family was about to be much more involved than they ever intended. Whispers and warped alibis. The disappearance of the Cipher Wheel plunged the spirit of the Delta into a state of polite chaos. Captain Beauregard immediately initiated a ship-wide search, and an emergency announcement informed all passengers that no one would be allowed to disembark at the next scheduled stop. The genteel cruise had turned into a floating crime scene. Tom, the history professor, was distraught. The historical value alone is immense. Who would do such a thing? Sarah, the architect, was already mentally mapping out potential hiding spots on the ship. Leo, surprisingly, found himself energized. This was better than any video game. Dad, Mom, remember that article about Blackwood? She's got a history of aggressive acquisitions. Chloe, meanwhile, was sketching furiously in her pad, not of the ship, but of the people in the Grand Salon. Julian was acting weird, she piped up. He was looking at the back entrance yesterday. Their informal investigation began. Tom, using his historical knowledge, started chatting with crew members and other history enthusiasts on board, subtly probing for any odd observations. Sarah, with her sharp eye for detail, began observing passenger behavior, noting who seemed too calm, too nervous, or too interested in the investigation. Leo, ever the tech-savvy one, noticed something peculiar. The ship's internal security cameras, usually streaming to a central monitor in the lobby, seemed to have glitched around the time of the theft. The feed from the Grand Salon specifically showed static for a critical 15-minute window before the discovery. Coincidence? Leo didn't think so. He also managed to get a tiny sliver of Wi-Fi near the smokestacks and, against all odds, found a cached forum post detailing Evelyn Blackwood's desperate need for the Cipher Wheel to complete her Southern collection to secure a major museum endowment. Chloe, the intuitive one, noticed patterns. She saw Julian Blackwood frequently meeting in hushed tones with the shifty-looking man she'd seen earlier, now identified as Mr. Silas Vance, a maritime consultant, also listed on the passenger manifest. Vance had an unsettling habit of appearing wherever the Millers were discussing the theft. Their prime suspects were quickly narrowed down to the Blackwoods and Vance. One evening, during a mandatory Southern storytelling event in the main lounge, the tension reached a peak. Tom, trying to glean information, started a conversation with Evelyn Blackwood. Ms. Blackwood, terrible business about the Cipher Wheel, isn't it? Such a loss for history. Evelyn's eyes, cold and sharp, fixed on Tom. Indeed, Professor Miller. A tragedy. One might even say convenient for someone with a less than reputable collection to fill a sudden void. Recounting how it had been passed down through his family for generations. Thanks to the Miller family, he announced, gesturing to them, this piece of history, and indeed, a piece of my family's story, has been saved. He unveiled the Cipher Wheel, placing it back on its pedestal, now under much tighter security, of course. The remaining days of the cruise were a mix of quiet pride for the Millers and lingering whispers among the other passengers about the excitement of the journey. Leo, no longer a grumpy teenager, found himself recounting the chase in the cargo hold to an impressed group of younger passengers. Chloe, sketching the steamboat's intricate details, felt a new sense of accomplishment beyond her usual artistic endeavors. Sarah and Tom looked at their children with a renewed sense of admiration, realizing their kids were far more capable and observant than they'd given them credit for. On the last day, as the Spirit of the Delta approached its final destination, St. Louis, Missouri, the family stood on the deck, watching the vast expanse of the Mississippi roll by. You know, Leo said, looking out at the river, this was actually pretty cool. Way better than my gaming console. Chloe nodded, her sketch pad filled with not just drawings of the ship, but caricatures of Julian and Vance, and a detailed drawing of the Cipher Wheel. "It was like living a history book, Dad," she added. Tom clapped Leo on the shoulder. "See? I told you this river had stories to tell. Sometimes you just have to listen closely. And sometimes you have to save them." Sarah smiled, squeezing Tom's hand. The cruise had been anything but the relaxing vacation she'd planned, filled with unexpected chaos and danger. But it had also been an unparalleled adventure, a test of their wits, and a profound experience that had brought their family closer together. As they disembarked, stepping back onto solid ground, the hum of the city replaced the rhythmic churn of the paddle wheel. They left the spirit of the Delta not just with souvenirs, but with an incredible, shared memory of solving a mystery on the legendary Mississippi. The Millers had started their journey as a modern family seeking a digital detox. They ended it as unexpected guardians of history, forever linked by the secrets and adventures of the Great River. And perhaps, Tom thought, as they hailed a taxi, that was the best kind of history lesson of all.